Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to have Mike Blumenthal on the show. Mike, how's it going, man?
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me, man. Super excited to chat today.
Yeah, awesome. Me too. Definitely want to get into a lot of different topics regarding software and lead generation, marketing in general. And I kind of want to start it off, just kind of get right into it. Kind of a bit of a backstory on, where you started, kind of how you got into this whole, growth partner and kind of helping out software companies. And yeah, so I'll give it off to you
Sure,
for a quick intro.
sure. Yeah. So, Mike Blumenthal, uh, born and raised in Michigan in the United States. I would say entrepreneurship started several bloodlines before me. My great grandfather was a kosher butcher in Detroit. My great uncle used the byproduct to make soap. And even my dad had his own security business, mortgage business, and was in tech in the 90s selling hardware and software as a service even back then. So it's in my blood. And how I would say my journey started in tech. In college, I was studying international business, and a big tech CEO came into our class and spoke about how you use data to make decisions and how you can inform and grow revenue using data. And my analytical mind was just blown away. So I went up to him after the class, shook his hand, said, "I have no idea what you just said, but I want to learn." And I spent 100 hours unpaid learning digital marketing. And then within 6 months, I was head of growth at a SaaS company that we were building, and took that company, Dental Insider, from a database to six-figure ARR with 6,000 users in less than a year. And then I was off and running. So I've been building tech companies the last 7 years and love working with exciting founders who are super, super smart and know how to solve cool problems.
Wow, that's really a true inspirational story. I mean, going from college, I mean, that's definitely, kind of frowned upon nowadays, right? But it's really cool to see how, you literally just gave yourself to this guy, invested your time and money, into him, and just kind of moved on from there. But definitely really cool to see. And it kind of leads me to my next point is how you actually got into, the meat of what you do now, right? Which is, from what I understand, kind of like a growth partner to these software companies, right?
Sure. Yeah. So how did I get into SaaS lead generation? So ultimately, what I found is you need to deliver business results. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to be an early stage contractor, founder in several companies where, I was already kind of a trusted body. I was referred into it, but you only get so many swings like that, right? So that's how I've gotten to where I've been at the last 7 years. But most recently, especially in 23, with the AI revolution, how big personal brands are, it's a little different to show up and say, "Hey, like here's all the cool stuff I've done. Here's all the cool tech companies I've built. Let me join your team." There's not as much trust, I would say. And so I realized that the Trojan horse of Mike is, sure, I'm going to come in, I'm going to bring you leads, paying customers. And ultimately, you're going to see the value that I bring as your strategic partner in your business. And our relationship is going to grow, and we're going to build a successful company. So that's kind of how I decided I'm going to be the top of funnel guy, and it's going to work out for everybody.
Yeah, definitely, Mike. And a lot of things have changed in software in the past year, and even more in the 2 3 year range. But I want to hear your kind of biggest concerns about moving into this new year. Obviously, there's always the question of what's going to be going on next year, as we're coming to the end of this year. What are kind of your predictions and concerns going into the new year?
Sure. So I think 2023 was the Wild West in a lot of ways for tech, with AI and ChatGPT coming to the market. And at the same time, I also see these gurus, we'll call them, volume, volume, volume on cold email. So the first concern, I think, or just change in 24 is these new Google spam rules. You're really going to see a lot of people who have made their money just from Google, Gmail, outbound cold email are going to have to pivot or, get more creative. So I think that's an interesting one. The other side of the coin is the content, the blogging and the SEO stuff that came through AI. Google also cracked down on that with their content rules. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a market correction on like totally AI and mass volume, and a little bit more about personalization and content. The other side, other thing I'm concerned about, number three, is the spending. So you're hearing from a lot of macro trends that spending is slowing down, and particularly in the SaaS space. So it should be interesting to see if growth is going to continue. I know investment has been down, so I think it's a focus on profitable growth in 2024.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And, definitely running a bit of a more lean campaigns where, obviously there's tons of leads that you can reach out to, but lately a big narrative that all of the people on Twitter and LinkedIn are pushing is just send more volume, right? Which is the case in most cases. And there's sending volume, and then there's sending volume correctly, right? And being still able to target those relevant people with a relevant offer. And that's what a lot of people are missing. And let's say you're sending 100 emails a day, but they're to relevant people with a relevant offer. It'll do much better than sending thousands of emails a day to irrelevant people, and the offer doesn't match up, or it's not done correctly. So totally agree with you on that. And I want to see what you think about the Google Workspace restrictions more in specific, because in my opinion, I think it's a great thing, right? I think it's going to cut out the, bottom 30% of the cold emailers that are just kind of, launching campaigns here and there, but not really doing much, and they don't really know much about it. And it's going to elevate the top 20, 30% of the cold emailers who genuinely know what to do, right? So I want to hear what you think about that specifically.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think cream rises to the top, and you made two really valid points. One, if you're sending the right offer the right way to the right people, you're still going to win. And
Yeah.
two, if you know what you're doing, you're also going to keep winning. And if you don't, the game's going to get harder to play. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And moving on to kind of like tools and AIs that people are using nowadays, specifically for lead gen and marketing. Have you implemented any of those that are mainstream, or maybe even a little less known, into your personal
Hmm.
systems that maybe people don't know about?
That's a good question. So for my lead generation tech stack specifically, I think there's some really interesting ways to integrate automations where, if then sequences where if someone replies, then trigger something in the CRM. So doing CRM automations, getting Zapier involved. These aren't novel, but I think they're very important because you can really move the needle on closing more deals for your clients. I think another huge trend that I've been noticing is these like chatbots, or basically AI appointment setters, for you to start having conversations, or your clients to start having conversations either on websites and email and chat and text to book appointments. And so I think it's really going to be a big movement towards that. I noticed it this summer when I ordered a pizza without talking to a person, and now I'm starting to see it where I'm, booking appointments with my doctor, and it's all just with a robot and selecting, the time that works best.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's crazy to see that, it's everywhere, right? And not only in lead generation and kind of deeper marketing, it's also with us, every day, right? So that's definitely cool to see. And I want to move on a bit from kind of how it's implementing lead generation to how it's implementing something that's more software related, right? More of what you kind of do with dealing with
Sure.
software. How has that affected, machine learning and AI? How has that affected what you do?
It's a really good question. So, I mean, top level, I had my first exit in October of 23 with an AI SaaS tool that's an LLM that essentially takes your idea and turns it into a business plan for you to go to market. So, it's totally democratized the first few steps that are very daunting for business owners, or entrepreneurs, as we call them. And I think like doubling down. You can even use no code tools. I have just in December, when we're talking right now, three founders have approached me with either a bubble prototype or a glide prototype, no code. It's got AI integrated and it's solving a real problem for actual businesses every day. Whether it's time, money, or efficiency, you can very quickly spin up a prototype, validate it, and go to market because of this AI revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I can relate to that 100% because I'll be honest with you, a few days ago, I wanted to take on a little bit of a project by, creating this custom bot, right? That it's pretty simple. It's scraped Google My Business, information and stuff like that. But I wanted to bring it kind of in-house because, there are solutions that you can just, buy online and pay pretty expensive prices. So I wanted to see if I can do it myself. And me personally, I have no computer science experience, no coding experience, no courses even. And with the help of ChatGPT and 5 hours of time, I was able to build a fully functioning scraper. And obviously it's kind of simple stuff now that I look at it, but someone with no experience was able to bring that and solve a real problem that generates some sort of cash, right? That generates some sort of income for businesses. So I think that's also another factor that not only a lot of more people are using it, but a lot of people that have lower intelligence with computer science can actually use that and build their stuff up. So I think that's really cool, and that's just a little personal thing that I've experienced that just really kind of opened my eyes to what's really going on.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
It's democratizing tech for people.
I want to touch more on that exit, right? And kind of that experience of, exiting a company and a software company at that. And what kind of that experience was, because I mean, that's huge, right? So I definitely want to hear more about what that experience was like.
Yeah, so the founders of Dime a Dozen AI, Sal and Monica, they approached me in June of this year, and the conversation said, "This tool's making money. I want to exit because this is my game. I start businesses and get out of them quick. How do we turn this into a, sellable business?" So, as a growth marketer, as a top of funnel, strategist, I said, "Here's the things we need to do. Here's the strategy." We executed it, and in 4 months, 120 days, we had a six-figure check for the tool. So that's the high level of how it went. But of course, if you have any double clicks or ways you want to dive in, it was a really crazy experience working with Acquire.com. They're fantastic, and just taking something from really just like a tool, making a little bit of money to a big check.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely the dream of every software company owner. So congrats to you on that. And I want to talk about that whole process of someone getting into this whole thing, and how you would start by
Sure.
picking a target market, right? Picking a niche and solving a
Mm-hmm.
specific
Mm-hmm.
problem for either business owners or the general
Yeah.
public. How would you advise someone to do that?
It's a good question. So I have a six-step process I've developed throughout the last 7 years of building tech companies because I keep seeing this over and over pattern. It's a pattern recognition of what it takes. And so the six steps have two sides. One is the strategy, so picking the right strategy, and the other one is execution. So if you have a good strategy but you don't execute, then you just have an idea. If you don't have a good strategy and you're just executing, you're probably not going to win. So it combines those two, and the where you start is great. I just hosted a workshop in Boston 2 weeks ago for the whole international business school, and it was a founder workshop where we worked on just that, Alex. It was how do you start. So the first thing I had these students do was I had them pick a market and a problem to solve. So what problem are you solving? And then instead of the, I would say, tenuous and long process of doing market research and all this, I literally had them type in their elevator pitch into the tool I exited, dimeadozen.ai, and immediately it validates your business and gives you a business plan. And the feedback from this four-step, 2 hour workshop was just starting is the most important part because people are so daunted, like, hey, I have this cool idea, I want to do this. It's like, no, just start and take action, and things will start moving.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And that's so cool that you can use our own software to solve a problem of other people trying to solve a problem, right? So definitely a little bit of a full circle moment there, and totally agree with you that,
Hmm.
people just need to take action, right? And sometimes when people come up to me and they're like, "Hey, Alex, I'm trying to get into this whole agency thing and kind of start making money online," or not even online, but just starting to make money, and they basically just don't take action, right? That's what really sets the people apart. And I can tell from the first 5 days of being with them, of meeting a person, right, and kind of engaging with them and kind of helping them out with their agency thing, or even if it's not an agency, if they're going to be action takers, right, or if they're just going to end up in the same cycle of, yeah, I want to do this, but I don't end up taking action, right? So it's just all about acting fast, right,
Hmm.
and being able to actually execute on what's going up on here, right?
Yeah, totally. My best friend and I have a saying, there's sayers and then there's doers. And, it sounds like you're running into a lot of sayers. Alex, help me. And then it's time to do, and they don't. That's what sets you apart from winning and losing is doing.
Totally, totally. I like that. Yeah, sayers and doers, and in terms of that, and I want to move into more of software specific stuff, because I feel like a little bit of the viewers want to hear that. How have you seen that SaaS like pricing, right? Because obviously a lot of this SaaS stuff comes down
Hmm.
to pricing, and that's definitely an important part of it. How has that kind of changed over the years, right? And how are you kind of taking that into account when growing and scaling these software companies?
Sure. So, a couple key points with innovations in SaaS pricing. So, previously it was pure subscription play, right? So, instead of one-time purchase, let's say you have to buy a server, now you can just subscribe to Amazon Web Services. So, that was like, version one of SaaS is subscription play. Then, like version two, we get to this usage-based model, whether it could be the amount of cloud usage storage that you're using scales up your pricing, or it could be the Slack model where every user now increases your recurring revenue. The most recent innovation that I've seen happen, and I think Stripe has really taken this one to the moon, is the percentage of the transaction. And I'm starting to see that in multiple clients I work with where they're getting market traction, free users, but the way that they make their money is by the amount of money flowing through the two-sided marketplace. And that to me is really, really scalable. And I think it's a big opportunity where if you can solve the right problem, where you hang out between two people who have a transaction and you can take a cut and they're moving a lot of money, it can be worth your while.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I hate those Stripe fees, but I mean, I bet they're making a killing off of it. So yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and they've got to make their money as well, right? So obviously, I want to dive in a little bit deeper into what the payment processors are doing versus like a DM automation tool, right? In terms of pricing and kind of
Mm,
how these companies would choose their pricing models to make the most profit and revenue eventually from these kind of services.
yeah, definitely. So we can transition back to version one, which is going to be a traditional subscription model. And I made a ultimate guide to SaaS pricing earlier this summer as an auto DM. So I spent a lot of time researching this. And there's a bit of psychology, and then there's also just I would say like thumb in the air, like testing required to figure out what is the propensity to pay for your customers. If we're going to talk like specifically about a DM tool and how you pick your pricing model, we'll just say in general, it needs to be as simple to understand as possible because the last thing you want is someone to show up on your pricing page, get overwhelmed by choice, and do nothing because then you have no money from this transaction.
Yeah.
The other thing I would warn you about is the free trial. It's a freemium model has been touted for years as like the way to grow. The only way freemium model works is if you collect the money. Otherwise, you're just giving away your software for free. And the best time to collect money is right when you have them hot signing up. So even if you give them a free trial, you should be collecting their credit card upon entering the site. It's not going to increase your conversion, but it will on the beginning, on the unique to actual paid conversion, but it will increase your conversion on free trials. And that's who's actually in there using your platform. So those are kind of the two key points I would say is, making sure to collect a credit card as soon as possible, and of course, making it simple so nobody gets confused coming in. I'm curious though, what's your take on how you like to price and when you're buying a SaaS? What's your personal opinion on what works for you? When do you choose to buy a SaaS?
Yeah, totally. So I've also seen a lot of different type of pricing models for the softwares that I use, right? Maybe even a little smaller softwares, people that are just building it one off. But what I like is when, I just need the software and I just put in my credit card and quickly start using it. Obviously a free trial is nice because, you get that, that 7 days or 14 days for free, right? It makes you feel good, even though it's like, a few dollars. But, it just makes you feel good. And there also is less friction. So it's interesting that you say that, just you want to get that credit card as soon as possible. But, that's definitely adding a little bit of friction, right? And it's cool to see that balance of, writing, getting that credit card and also, just getting these people to sign up because there's getting their credit card and there's also, getting their email address, which is a big thing, right? Because then you can retarget and nurture these people to eventually also
Sure.
sign up, right? So it is interesting, but
Yep.
I want to hear what you think about email collection versus credit card collection.
Yeah, great point. So you need to do both, and you should always collect the email before the credit card. So I'm glad you brought this up. I think ListKit did a fantastic job of putting me in their funnel recently. I think those are the client ascension guys. So I used Firebase. So I signed up with my Gmail very quickly in their portal, and then they asked for a credit card. And I go, I'm not ready to buy today. And
Mhm.
I wanted to see, like, get in under the hood and see what it was like. So I hit this exact pain point that you just described, right, Alex? So now, throughout the last 3 weeks, they've been continuously providing me value via email. They have a private community. They're sending me webinars. They are using great value add, like case study tips to reach out to me. So, to answer your question, collect the email, then collect the credit card and nurture. Absolutely agree.
Totally, totally. And I've also seen, these communities come up, and I think that's a new thing. And I've seen it not only with ListKit, but I've also seen it with other, companies such as uh, MailScale. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a cold email
Yep.
tool, and
Yep.
they have their private VIP Slack server, and you have to go through this whole email sequence to even be invited into there, right? And I thought it was brilliant because you have your VIP Slack server and your name's on there, and the whole team is in there, and it's so personal, and it's just so well done. And I don't know kind of how your approach with kind of inviting people into communities, but I think that's going to be huge going in not only with software but with courses, info products, and overall services.
Yeah. Yeah. The community circle, school, Discord, it's unparalleled because we're community-based species, and if you can get a group of people who are advocating for you, who are sharing their best practices, it makes the tool stickier, which is the whole point of a SaaS. Because you're charging them very nominal fees, low fees to be there, so you need them for a long time. And the community, I call it growth hack, is definitely a great way to do it.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that kind of is a good transition into the role of customer success managers and overall the customer experience with SaaS. So, what's your kind of take on how important and how that's changing within the software community?
Yeah, I think customer success is often talked about too late for a lot of SaaS companies, or even ignored. I can think to a conversation I had yesterday with a founder who has really no idea why people are churning. And it's not because lack of data, it's because lack of analysis of the data and lack of resources to focus on that part. And I want to emphasize this next point. The value of your business is your recurring revenue. And the only way that you have a valuable business is to retain customers for the long haul. Because when you go into due diligence, right? So when Dime a Dozen was in due diligence, they want to know, what's your customer lifetime value? They want to know how much monthly recurring revenue you're generating. I mean, those are the two key metrics that are going to evaluate your business over time, and they help you grow sustainably if you don't want to exit. So the role of customer success is absolutely crucial in building a successful SaaS company.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that not even just a SaaS company, but even any type of company, right? If you're not able to hold on to your clients for, you know, long enough, then you're not going to be able to have that consistent monthly recurring revenue. And, there's no option for exits at that point, and it's just not stable, right? So that's why totally I agree with you that being able to keep your customers the longest and have them paying a decent amount is very important, and it can be dealt with proper customer management. So definitely agree with you
Yep.
there. And I want to touch on kind of the SaaS marketing strategies other than kind of like the traditional, cold email possibly, and kind of stuff like that, and how that has changed. Whether there's new ad platforms or kind of techniques that you're using uh,
Mm-hmm.
to get more people into these software companies.
Yeah, so there's two I'll hit on here. So the methodologies for finding customers are either inbound, which is gathering, or outbound, which is hunting. The biggest shift I've seen for SaaS companies in their growth is the ability to use a personal brand to create inbound or gather these leads. And so I think as we move into 24, if the founders who have the biggest personal brands and the most trust online will have the least amount of friction. It'll be the easiest for them to bring in customers from a inbound perspective. And then when we talk about outbound, uh, when you're trying to go hunt, I've seen a fantastic success doing it with basically an army of appointment setters in social media, because cold email at some point may get saturated. And some might argue it already is. I've even seen you tweet out that this week you get 100 cold emails and none of them are really differentiated. To your point earlier, sure, the cream rises to the top 20% are going to keep going. But if you're trying to build a SaaS and you got to be in the top 20%, you're not going to do it. I mean, you're busy. You got to do product development, customer support, customer success. There's no way you're going to build that. So instead, having other scalable strategies to go where your customers hang out and hunt there is a crucial marketing strategy.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I can definitely relate that to even my sales process. And, I've seen over the months and even the year at this point of, how easier it gets when you have some sort of personal brand, right? And I'm not saying that I have some sort of crazy personal brand, but, having, let's say 2,000 followers, it is definitely easier to close people and to have, a sense of trust between us when people are talking with you on a sales conversation. But that's the thing where, and I want to see how this played into your exit. Is how do you exit when the company is so tied up with the personal brand, right? Does that affect the exit, and are you even
Mm-hmm.
able to exit as easily?
It's a good question. I saw Jordan Ross, eight-figure agency, mention this, where if the company and you are one, it extends the time frame for which you're going to have to be involved in the business. So when you're exiting, generally there's some sort of clause in there how long you have to stick around. And so if you are the brand and you do choose to accept money for your business in an form of an exit, they're likely going to tie you down for, 24 months, 36 months. And meanwhile, there'll be some sort of transition plan they'll make with you where there's another face or somebody else who can keep driving leads.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, completely. So was that something that you experienced with your exit?
Fortunately, the offer that came through and we accepted only had a 60-day retention plan. It was a small enough exit, and I would say the right guy, the right team coming in where they didn't believe that they needed to have a long term play. There were other offers that even kept the founding team having equity in the company. So it's always on the table. It's just what propensity and what desire do you have as the exiting founder to stick around, and hopefully you get the deal that suits your needs.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's good to hear that you guys didn't have to go through that. And I want to move back a few topics to, kind of talk about the challenges of starting up, a software company, and, possibly some personal
Sure.
experience of just the worst things that can possibly go on when, starting a software company, because it's definitely a huge ordeal.
Yeah, worst thing that can happen. I think the worst thing that can happen is you don't actually solve a real problem. And, hopefully you can sharpen your ability to assess markets and find a gap. So the first thing I have my founders do if we're like launching, Alex, is I say we need to pick up an existing market. Okay, if you go look for a software to help people measure when grass is ready to be cut, and you go look online and there's no market for this, nobody's ever thought of this idea. That's a bad thing, in my opinion. You really are
Okay.
probably not solving a problem because grass is cut every day. If this was a problem to be solved, somebody would have found a way to measure grass and send you a notification. So that's kind of the first step is like, is there a market? And then finding who's in, who's playing there, what competitors are there, and then the gap that you can do uniquely better than them, whether it's technology, service, however it is. But you should always start there because just because you can build technology to measure grass outside on the ground doesn't mean that it solves a problem and people will pay for
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I could definitely relate to that with, whether it's kind of like an agency thing or kind of, selling a service. But I want to see, is there like a fine line between nobody doing it and too many people doing it? And, I guess you want to be somewhere in the middle,
it.
but where is that middle?
Good question. Yeah, on saturation and competition. This is a subjective answer, and not that this whole my opinions are my own, but I think if you think that there's market to be captured based on you solving a problem, you might as well try. Uh, Too much saturation is something that stops a lot of people from even getting involved. And I would go and say the opposite, where if there's a lot of competition, it means there's a lot of money to be made, and you just got to figure out how to carve out your little corner uniquely. So I try not to think of that as too much of a bad thing. But the one caveat here is if everybody's racing to the bottom, right? If you're going to have to charge $1 a month or $10 a month to win in that space, think about how many customers you need to make a living. That should be your deciding factor on saturation and competition.
Yeah, totally. And definitely a race to bottom is something that should be mentioned more, in my opinion, in the whole, entrepreneurial space because, people just, either way, you're making money, right? But at a point, is it worth it to bring on that lower paying client or to sell that software for that steep discount, right? And I think that's really what sets apart the people who can wait, a few extra weeks or months to be able to get that higher paying client or to be able to develop something that's worthy of charging more, just because they're able to provide a better product, right? And at the end of the day, like Alex Hermosi says, the more you're able to spend, to get people inside of, either your service or your software, the better, right? And the more you can charge, and the better your business is going to be, and in terms of health, right? So I definitely agree with you on that. And kind of pivoting from that, I want to ask, what have you seen change in software when it comes to like cross-platform, integrations and kind of systems? Because, personally, I've
Mm,
been using a decent amount of them, and I want to see where you see it and where you see it going.
yeah. The days of having five softwares and having to maybe manually move data between them or do end of day reporting is over. We can really thank Zapier and Make and just the overall API protocol for bringing everything together. And I see the most successful SaaS companies are the ones that have native integrations with tools or a very easy way to pull the data into other platforms. Because I talk to dozens of founders every month. All of them use different CRMs, different sales tools, different email tools, and the cohesion and the way you make a business work is to have only a couple places where you have to go for the source of truth. And so I think I'm glad you asked. Cross integration and the ability to bring your service onto those platforms via automation is huge.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And like I mentioned before, I'm not the most technical person, right? I don't like doing fancy automations, but it's come to a point where if you aren't using it, then you are falling behind and you're falling behind big time. And, that's kind of forced me to, use Zapier and use make, right, .com. And funny story about that is I use Smartlead for sending emails, right? And Smartlead doesn't have an integration with Zapier or Make, kind of easily, right? You would have to pull the API key or something like that. And I just wanted to do the simplest solution. And then I checked and instantly has just an easy connection with Zapier. And with that being said, I moved to instantly just because it's easier, and it's a quick connection. So that just goes to show that now instantly is going to have an extra few $100 right every month just because of that one quick simple integration. So I mean that's definitely proving a point that being able to connect between multiple softwares is just huge.
Yep. Yeah, well said. And you just proved a unique selling point for a saturated market being cold email software, why you went along. That's a unique differentiator for now. It's not a moat because Smartlead could very easily integrate with Zapier, but it's a buying
Yeah.
decision. And understanding those buying decisions is how you build a great tool.
Totally, totally, yeah, and they definitely understood their customer and understood the softwares they use, what their needs are, and I mean it's just great. So, with that being said, Mike, it was really a pleasure to have you on here. Where can where can everyone find you? Where can your socials? Where do you post the most often? Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, Alex, it's been great to talk to you. Really, really great conversation. So you can find me on Twitter at Michael Scott Blue, like the office character, and Blue doesn't have an E. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mike Blumenthal, and I have a YouTube channel as well where I share a lot of what we talked about today, building funnels, building SaaS companies, and how you move customers through the funnel. So, Alex, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, man. Love following you along on X, and we'll be in touch, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
awesome. Thanks, man.